This next speaker, Mr. Daniel, co-founder of Tauri Systems. You saw a little bit of Tauri in Johannes' talk, is here to tell you today about the future of like multi-platform apps. I'm super excited about this as a person who has used Electron and wants something better. Can I say that? And so I'm really excited for this talk. It's kind of like you can build apps for anywhere. That for me is super exciting. I won't spoil too much of it. It is my honor and privilege to introduce you to Daniel, everybody. Let's give it up for Daniel.
Hi, Dornbirn. You guys can hear me, right? Cool, thanks. And thank you to the organizers. Welcome to WorkerConf. Thank you, Johannes. I don't see you, but we've been working on Tauri for 3 years, and that was literally the first time at a conference where I saw somebody demo a Tauri app, and it literally brought tears to my eyes because we've all been in this kind of COVID situation where, you know, we've been limited by the distance of our screens. And I think that as workers, one of the most important things for us is to, you know, broaden our horizons, to look really far. And in these online worlds of Zoom calls and Hangouts and, you know, Stream Decks, you really are limited to just what you see in front of you. And I think that setting here in Dornbirn and around Lake Constance in these mountains is maybe an opportunity for us all to really reflect on the very far future and how we got to where we are today and what it is we want to build. And that's actually the inception story of Tauri because, you know, 3 years ago, things were pretty much the same as they are today. You know, you download your your tool chain and you set up you want to build an app like what Johannes is building. What do you have? You either build it with Electron or maybe you're using Qt, and the options just weren't there. And I think it has a lot to do with this paradigm of software as a service, infrastructure as a service. Amazon's, Microsoft's wanting to sell you more hardware, wanting to sell you more compute time so that you do everything in that ecosystem. And, you know, I'm sure you've all heard the horror stories of not putting limits on your AWS minutes and waking up to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 invoices. And I think that born out of this free real estate mindset where, you know, for the past 20 years, we were just happy it worked. Like, yes, it works. I can ship. And now we're getting to a place where, okay, we just got out of a 3-year COVID situation. Now we're in the brink of a new world war. The ecological situation is falling apart. And my brand new Mac, Book Pro, M1, whatever, struggles to run 4 apps. You look at your memory consumption, it's like, why am I using 10 gigabytes of swap? Oh, okay, yeah, I know who's to blame for this, and it's not Electron. Because I think that Atom and Electron were very important stepping stones in getting something to work, but now we need to work better. And I'm gonna kind of walk you through the story of Tauri, and what was shocking to us was the resonance that we got right away. I mean, being Hacker Newsed is one thing, and dealing with the Reddit trolls is another thing, but also listening to the stories that people were telling about the things that they hated. And I mean, if you just look at what happened to 1Password when they released their Electron app, the shitstorm that happened, just because people's computers were being used. I mean, that's why we use computers, and that's where this local first idea really was born. And people say, yeah, this is the Electron killer, but I think where we're going is more toward this mentality of building things properly, but doing it from a honorable, secure, and performant way that conserves resources, not only on your computer, but also for the environment. And we're going to talk a lot about those topics here. There's a really great project out there called OSS Insight. I highly recommend you check out your GitHub project or your favorite project. if you scroll down on the screen, you'll see the projects that are interested or stargazing on Tauri. Almost 1% of them come from Alibaba. Why is this? Why is Tencent interested? Why is Microsoft interested? ByteDance. What do these people all have in common? They have massive cloud expenses. They need to start conserving resources because, if you talk to somebody that says, yeah, here, use my API, and they're like, okay, gosh, how much electricity is that going to cost? And they're like, well, here's the benchmarks. And they're like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set up this service on a blade in Germany because that's where our ops guys live, but then we're going to ship it to Sweden because the electricity is less expensive, right? This is how modern corporations are thinking, and from the perspective of being a lighthouse, I think it's important for all of our projects to really recognize the importance, the utter necessity of listening to these alarms going off in our heads because the world is burning and we all have to do something about it. Now, stargazing is great, being trending is awesome, being in the top 185 repositories on GitHub is great. I think the next one is going to be Git. We're going to have more stars than Git, and it's humbling to be, I think this is an old version of the slide now, we're the third most popular Rust project just after Rust. But what we discuss a lot in our team, which is about 18 people right now, is that the thing that we can do better as a large community is offer people tools that are safer. I'll just give you an example from a totally different ecosystem. So in one of my former careers, I was a carpenter. And there's a type of tool that's super dangerous in the wood shop. It's a circular saw. And the circular saw, if you're not paying attention, it can shoot back that piece of wood at you. It will cut off your thumb if you're not paying attention. And it actually happened to a professional architect that I know. He was working in his shop, he got distracted, and he lost the tip of his thumb. And that's because the engineers that built it didn't think to put in a safety guard. So I'm not going to name the company that does this. There's a couple of them out there. But nowadays, the modern saw, if it detects something conductive, like a piece of metal or a piece of skin, it shoots a piece of aluminum into the blade, stops the blade, you ruin the stopper, but you don't even get a cut on your finger. And I'm not saying exactly that using bloated apps is like cutting off your fingers, but I want you to remember that metaphor when we get to talking about the environmental costs of bloated apps. But first, everybody's like, it's not my fault. It's not my problem. It's not my responsibility. And with better DX, what we're experiencing in these communities is that people just take the tools that are given to them and they don't think about what it means. NPX create Tauri app, and you've got a Svelte build app in 2 minutes. Maybe I'll show that demo if we have time and I don't talk too much. But who's thinking about the security? Like if you do the same thing with Electron app, you get these massive warnings in the console. Gosh, you shouldn't be using the internet with this app because it's dangerous. and everyone is pointing fingers. And we decided, look, we're going to point the fingers at ourselves. We're going to help people build baseline apps that are more secure out of the box. This is a true story. Someone on our on GitHub made a comment about, security shouldn't be a concern sometimes. That's wrong. Security always is a concern, especially once you start getting into desktop applications, into mobile applications, when your apps are outside of the sandbox of the browser. You're touching the user's system. You have access to their file system, maybe to their camera. And a simple app that maybe just re-renders a website is technically running on that user device. And you always have to worry about security, and that's why, you should not be that tool that allows an attacker to get into your users' computers. It sounds kind of obvious, but when you go deep into the implications of what happens when your users get compromised, they're losing potentially their wealth, their identity, Have I been pawned, as Johannes shared earlier, is a real thing because security is always kind of the thing you bolt on at the end. And I can tell you, technical debt, architectural debt, is something that you almost don't address when you get to the end of the project because you're happy it just works. So in order to verify our assumptions that we're making a better system, we had a 6-month audit process with an organization called Radically Open Security. We published our audit report. It was both a horizontal and a vertical audit, which means they looked not only at the libraries that we've constructed, but also an application using all of the APIs and bells and whistles, including our updater, all of that stuff, in order to verify that we were right, and we weren't. There were about 40 or 50 findings, and a lot of advice. And I don't know if many of you spend time in the security industry either conducting audits or being on audit teams or reviewing the work of auditors. I have to recommend you choose projects that are concerned about this and read the audits. They're really exciting. And one of the things that we thought was a good idea comes back to JavaScript land. I'll talk a little bit more about the actual architecture of Tauri in a minute, but basically, you have a core part of the application written in Rust. That's doing the inception of the application, rigs the windows, et cetera. And then you have your user interface. And there is a way for these two things to talk to each other. It's kind of like a bridge. And you're sending basically a structured message from one side to the other side. And we thought that, putting in a nonce might have been a good way to make it secure. Turns out it wasn't. And so what we ended up doing is we created a novel method by which the communication pathway to the secured APIs only can happen, if you choose this approach, to isolate the functional handles to the code that you expect. And this is something in JavaScript that's bugged us for a long time. We're happy to see projects like Solid.js and Svelte coming around that don't mess with the prototype anymore, which is obviously important. But the moment you ingest any kind of third-party code or even any kind of remote code, you are opening pathways for attackers to XSS your system, and that means basically you're allowing people to use APIs that they shouldn't be using. And we built a way that actually prevents that, kind of like how tree shaking out functions works. If you don't want to use a part of a library, you just ingest that one part and the rest is removed from your code base. Security is hard to get people to care about. I didn't hear anyone smiling or crying or laughing, but this should make you maybe grin and cry a little bit. Because, Tauri apps can get really small. Like, if you try really hard, you can get them down to sub 500 kilobytes. And the way this works is, instead of a multi-purpose engine like V8, we are only shipping the actual code that you need to run your app. We're not. If you don't need to use our fetch service from the Rust side, we don't ship it, right? And it's really possible to go very, very small. And there's good reasons to do that. Now, Johannes said before his app right now is at 5 megabytes. I'm not sure how much extra compression he's done on that, but one of my friends used to work on a relatively popular application that streamed over BitTorrent into your computer. You could watch videos while you were streaming from BitTorrent. And they got super, super, super popular to the point where they had hundreds of thousands of users all around the world, and they were shipping updates 2 or 3 or 4 times a week. And it worked pretty well until you started realizing that their mirrors were going down because they hit their absolute traffic limits. And, calculating the energetic cost of your application, your APIs, your data transit, it's important, but we thought we'd try to, do some visualization here. Now, I don't know how many trees get cut down in this region every year. I'm guessing it's not 200,000, maybe not 2 million, but it's kind of obscene. This free real estate idea of, well, I build it, I ship it, it works, we ship another update, we ship another 600 megabytes. We are ultimately all responsible for this environment that we live in, and when we don't do our part individually, then we can't point fingers at someone else for not doing their part. I think it's extraordinarily relevant, and I think that what you're seeing nowadays is that also consumers care because they have limited bandwidth on their devices, and it's really important. And this kind of brings us back to the community, right? We built Tauri so that people can build better apps. But what we've recognized is that, and I'm sure you've seen this in some of your projects too, the community comes together and helps the community. And right now, like I said, we have about 16 people who've joined us, who've started providing improvements to Tauri, and they all kind of meet and hang out over at the Discord. I don't know how many there are. It's a couple thousand people. It's growing. And it got to a point at a certain point where we started getting contacted by venture capitalists who were like, woohoo, next big thing. We saw all of your trending stuff. Let's do some business. We got scared. I got scared. I've been working in open source since 17 years now, and I don't think I've sold out. But I was worried about creating a company and transferring the moral rights to the code to the company, and then the company saying, yeah, we should go open core and charge everybody for the updater. And, plugins, you have to buy them. And we didn't want that. We absolutely disagreed with that. And so we joined the Commons Conservancy, which is a Dutch foundation that exists to protect the moral aspects of the code, so that when I leave or when someone else comes in or whatever happens, the license of the code can't change. We have a procedure in place for removing members of the board of directors who maybe perform badly or do the wrong thing, because we want this to stay a community project. We think that open source is really the only thing that is going to be able to sustain this planet. And we also started an open collective where people can donate if you're interested. We used the donations to pay for our trademark and for part of the audit. So that money is all very visible what it's being used for. And now I'll talk about Tauri. I'm sorry, I'm kind of long-winded. Please forgive me. Has anyone here ever built an Electron app? Okay, a couple of you. So with an Electron app, you basically have a JavaScript system that it ships with Node.js, it ships with a Chromium type browser and a front end. I mean, that's kind of generally the idea of these apps. Tauri is similar. Basically, we have three parts. We have Tau, which is the part that makes windows. It creates menus, gives you a system tray, figures out the buttons that you're pressing, the so-called accelerators, and that's, it sounds like it's not much, but getting it to work on Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, Android, those two are coming in a couple weeks, means that you actually have to sort out a lot of edge cases, and believe it or not, fun fact, Linux is the most fractured ecosystem on the planet. It's kind of crazy just thinking about how many different kinds of window renderers you have, and it's a massive work. If you're interested, join the working group. We always need help there. Now, once you have a window, you have to put something into it. So web views, if you haven't heard the term before, are kind of like what you see on a website. It's got HTML, JavaScript, CSS. It doesn't really belong to a standards body, but it is also kind of the technology upon which PWAs are based. So once you have the window, you have to put something into the window, and we offer two things. Well, one right now, and then immediately after our stable launch, we'll give another one. One is the web view. So you inject a web view, and then you can populate that web view with your content. The other is a pure GL window managed by EGUI. So you can even, like, if HTML isn't your thing and you just want to write shaders and build your interface that way, you can do that with Rye. But you know, I mean, other projects are also using this. We built this out so that, for example, Dinosaur, which is an app construction kit for Dino, is using Rye for its desktop apps. And then Tauri. So Tauri is kind of like where all the pieces comes together. It gives you the API to interface with your file system or whatever, and provides a structure for integrating plugins, working with the file system. It has a full CLI. It also has build tools, so that you can build and bundle your final apps. You can sign them. You can have them actually made in full CI. And there's a lot of features. Like, for example, you can use Node.js to set up your app if you're familiar with doing website construction that way. But there are other Rust options. So you can stay entirely in the Rust ecosystem if you want to use something like Dominator or Vue. We have multi-window, we have headless, there's notifications, there's actually a pretty elegant updater that solves the Windows updater vulnerability that Electron has, because we introduced an additional signing mechanism. So we provide a secure context, like I was saying, Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. And we haven't found a web framework that doesn't work. If you do, let us know. And if you want to integrate your web framework with Tauri, then we have like I was saying, a Create Tauri app. So I'm going to try something. I don't know if this is going to play back. Is my audio going to come through when I play from the Mac? No? All right, well then I'll just put this link. I'll tweet the link later. This is a really great intro to 100 seconds of Tauri. So let's just go back. Right. What's next is the stable 1.0, like very, 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 very soon. One of the things that we are really happy about that'll be fully announced after we launch the 1.0 is that we've put together a partnership with Cloudflare, and they've granted us unlimited workers so that your open source project can use the Cloudflare distribution system as long as your project is using the GitHub updater service. So basically what that means is you can distribute at the edge to all locations on the planet that Cloudflare can provide to. We're like one step away from WebRTC. We have already proofs of concept, so it does work as bound to other languages like C, Java, Python, Go, Nim, take your pick. So you can actually harness the Tauri app from a different language. And we're planning on bringing out a series of books. But what I really want to show you is a demo. I think I have like 5 minutes or something. So I'm just going to, you can see this in the back of this room, or should I make the text bigger? Is it okay? Okay. tool. Where's my mouse? There we go. Oh, sorry. Okay, so we're going to just run npx create Tauri app. And I'm going to choose my personal favorite is with Vite, and I'm going to add the API package, and I'm going to choose Svelte TS, and it's you know these create projects. Yeah, so that was about 20 seconds. And this might take a little longer because we have to pull fresh packages, but I'm just going to do npm run Tauri dev. So what do you need to run Tauri? Basically, you need the Rust compiler, which comes along with Cargo, which is kind of like the npm for Rust. We've got full install tooling on our website. Demo gods, hello. Let's do it again. There we go. So basically, it's pulling in a couple hundred packages, and a lot of this is dev tooling. I would say about a third of it is dev tooling. And while we're here, I'll just open up the source. And here we go. Hello TypeScript. So this is your Tauri app. I'm just going to cancel that, and I'm going to do a run Tauri build, and then we're going to just see. Yeah, run. Let's change the identifier. Tauri bundle identifier. Tauri bundle identifier. And this is actually kind of an interesting little feature. You do know if you bundle an app on, for example, Mac OS, and you use the same name as some other app, it's probably going to try to put all of the app data in the same folder. So now what's happening is we are compiling all of the actual dependencies required for the app, and again, this is the first run. So after the first run, things are cached, so it's an order of magnitude faster. And you might ask yourself, hey, why is this taking so long? I've got stuff to do. But the thing is, by running this compilation step ahead of time, you're getting a much smaller bundle size. And I think this is also something that we're seeing in a lot of the modern JavaScript tool chains, is they're actually using Rust to compile things faster and smaller. And I think that is a small price to pay. Like if you consider that my device is now spending 45 seconds to yeah. Great. So it finished. It took 1 minute. Okay. So my computer took 1 minute to build an app that is about maybe more than 1/10 the size of some other app. And now I'm just going to go into the release folder, bundle, and I'm going to reveal in Finder so we can see exactly how big this is. Yeah, it's 8.3 megabytes. And this is because, if we go back to the where is it? Here. Allow list. So basically, I'm saying everything. Give me the entire API. I'm actually going to turn that off just to prove a point. I'm going to turn that off and run the build again. Now, if it's faster than a minute, I think I'm pretty happy with that. And what you're seeing in the background too is we're actually creating a proper app. Now, I'm not signing it, so if I send it to you, you'd have to get into that. But I don't want to waste all your time with me babbling here. I just want to make sure that it is smaller now. Right, there we go. It's 5.4 megabytes. It took half the time. So really the point I want to make here is that it's like Johannes was saying, we have a really great opportunity ahead of us to rethink the way things have always been done, and that's why I was super happy to be invited here to the name of this conf, because we are the ones who get to build our own tools, and we're the ones who get to change the way society thinks about things, and I'm really happy to have been here, and I think maybe there's a little bit of time for questions. I'm happy to answer them here on stage or later on in the day. I'll be around all the time.
Thanks so much, Daniel. What an amazing talk, right? I loved it. I loved everything. I loved the speed, the Rust compilation, and the fact that you pulled down packages from Cargo and it worked on this internet. That alone deserves some applause. You know what I'm saying?
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And the live coding, I would consider this a high quality presentation, so thank you. We, on Twitter with the hashtag WorkerConf, nobody asked any questions. Does anybody have questions? Now, this is your one chance. Show me your hands if you've got. Yes, we have a question. You can ask it and I'll just echo it here.
Yeah, I think you brought up very well the social responsibility of software. How do you think we can foster it to a higher degree that people take their real responsibility? Because I mean, software is so powerful, but I think oftentimes people don't feel it. They don't feel how important they are. So how can we share this feeling and this perspective better?
Yeah, he asked, how can we feel the shared responsibility of software on the planet and other social responsibilities? How can we get better at feeling and then practicing it?
Sure, I think one of the big misconceptions about open source is that it's some kind of moral code. Yeah. It's not. Open source is a license, it's a legal implication. You are bound to certain conditions. And I think that in order to address this kind of concern can only be addressed by communities, by having a code of standards. The worst things in the world, from my perspective, for open source is when open source gets militarized. I don't mean someone breaks into an NPM project, steals the email address, and changes the code. That's different. That's hijacking. That's criminal. What I'm talking about is when a software engineer thinks that they should make a statement by removing their work from the common good. And by that I mean, you've seen recently cases where in order to support the Ukraine side of the terrible things happening in Northeastern Europe right now, a developer actually modified the code to the point where A, it didn't work, and B, if you were in, I'm not sure. I think if your computer was geo-IP'd to Russia, it actually filled your computer with junk. And that, to me, is the opposite of responsibility. I think that if you have an issue with some corporation, let's say you don't like ICE in the United States, the Immigration Control Authority, removing your code from Chef is a type of protest, but it actually impacts the people that have nothing to do with it. And our suggestion is always take it to the community. And because open source is not a code of conduct, that's why we have codes of conduct in our repositories. And that's why we tell people, to either be part of it or to leave. If someone is abusive in our community, we will just say, get out. And from the perspective of corporate social responsibility, the most important thing is that you're responsible. It's not that hard. It's like, be a good person, care about your employees, care about your environment, care about your code, and for God's sake, care about dinner, and take time for your families. I think that's the key.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Really well done. That's an amazing presentation. Thank you. I'm gonna let you get off stage and awesome. Hey, we're having a good time so far, right? Yeah. That's good. There's like at least 3 of you. This is great. I have some announcements. One tip I like to play this game. It's called How Not to MC. Okay, this is how I announce the next thing. Ready? Okay, break time. That's not, so there's a break coming up. This is how I do it properly. There's a break coming up. If you want to MC something, by the way, take notes. This is free. There's a break coming up. It's a 30-minute break for you to socialize, get something to eat, go to the bathroom, do your human stuff, and come back. We have an amazing talk after. You do not want to miss it. It's about building a globally distributed system with all kinds of internationalization concerns and everything. It's really compelling. We'll meet back here at 11 o'clock this time zone, all right? Enjoy the break. We'll see you soon.